Daniel is the Real Bully is what I consider to be the grandfather of video essays. It's a 4-minute video explaining why Daniel LaRusso is the one who is actually wrong in the movie The Karate Kid. It's a fantastic video, and while it may be a bit of a joke, like, calling Mr. Miyagi, and I quote, a demon sorcerer, the idea that Johnny Lawrence isn't actually the bad guy in The Karate Kid is a pretty interesting concept. So much so that John Hurwitz, Hayden Schlossberg, and Josh Heald decided to create Cobra Kai, a sequel series to the Karate Kid movies that explore the lives of Johnny Lawrence, Daniel LaRusso, and all their new students, 34 years after the ending of The Karate Kid. Now, Cobra Kai is an interesting one because it is a sequel series to a beloved classic movie from the 80s, so it had a lot of standards to live up to. But it also still has to be able to stand on its own for newer viewers. Plus, the Karate Kid franchise had already tried to come back in 2010 with the reboot movie that seemed to do everything wrong for diehard fans. It seems kind of difficult to create a follow-up to a classic movie that doesn't upset people. We not only have the 2010 Karate Kid, but we also have arguably one of the biggest, most popular, and controversial sequels ever, Star Wars Episodes 7, 8, and 9. Have whatever opinions you want on these movies, but I don't think I've ever talked to someone who didn't have some problems with at least one of these movies. And at least in my opinion, I don't think the new movies stand well enough on their own without a good amount of knowledge from the movies that came before them. I think a good example of something that's able to have a good sequel, a good while after its original, and capture what made the original so great while adding its own elements and themes that don't take away from the original, is Top Gun. Top Gun Maverick is incredible at making me feel how I can only assume 20-year-olds felt after watching the first Top Gun. I'd never seen the first one, but that ended up not being a problem. Maverick did a great job letting me know everything I needed to know from the first one, and it did it in a way that wasn't just like a bunch of words telling me what happened in between movies. Like, it found a way to incorporate everything into the story when it made sense for it to come up. I think another great example is Rocky and the Creed movies. The Creed movies are a great modern-day follow-up to the Rocky movies, and while I could continue to talk about those, this video is not about any of that. It's about Cobra Kai, and how I think Cobra Kai is one of the best, if not the best sequel follow-up. I don't know the terminology, but whatever it is, for a movie that came out before I was born 22 years ago, while I do still think Cobra Kai is probably one of the best, if not the best sequel follow-up, I don't know the terminology thingy, I have decided to change the thesis of the video, and now I'm just going to be talking about how much I love Cobra Kai. But I did still want to bring up my thoughts on sequel series and their purposes, but Cobra Kai, alright? So at least in the original script of this video, I was going to continue to talk about Cobra Kai in a pretty normal way. Or, at least normal compared to like my other videos, but not this one, alright? Because Cobra Kai is my favorite show, alright? And it brings more hype to me than anything else, right? Avengers Endgame, who? No. Cobra Kai Season 5 is bringing me that kind of hype. So I'm going to talk about it however I want to talk about it. And if you don't like that, then fuck off, right? This is my video talking about how much I love a thing. I genuinely don't care if you don't like Cobra Kai. I mean, by all means, don't like the show, because it's a pretty stupid show. I mean, most of the plot points and driving forces of the story are coincidences. Oh look, Johnny goes to the dealership at the exact same time Daniel and Sam happen to be there. Robbie happens to see Miguel with Johnny when they're bonding. Miguel happens to see Sam with Robbie and the rest of the LaRussos. Robbie and Daniel run into Johnny at the hardware store. Tori sees Miguel kissing Sam, you get it. And so many of the plot points just seem like easy things to do. Make rivals, have most characters change sides every season, just do shit to cause drama, and have people be absolutely insane human beings doing things that would probably kill someone. And you know what? Don't worry about consequences in most cases, but sometimes worry when the plot demands it, blah blah blah. Yes, you have valid reasons to nitpick this show, but everything I just mentioned, and all the other soap opera-y, melodramatic, cheesy, easy things you could complain about in this show are why I love this show. Let me remind you that this series is based off the Karate Kid movies. The movies that start out as, hey, here's an underdog who learns karate and deals with bullies by winning a karate tournament. It's great. Then you know what? Let's go to Okinawa and become a town hero by saving people during a hurricane. Then let's have this dude challenge our boy to a fight to the death that ends in a honk. And now we're gonna go back to Reseda, and what's that? A goddamn Superman-level evil businessman making plutonium deals who decides to stop all of his business to torture a high schooler who won a karate tournament. The original movies just get progressively crazier and crazier, but it all still felt fairly realistic in the world of the Karate Kid, and somehow, against all odds, Cobra Kai is able to do that exact same thing. Oh, first few seasons is pretty basic, right? You got some kids, they learn karate, they fight in a tournament, all good. But then we start getting into karate gang warfare, where my boy Miguel over here almost dies. And then, they just go back to tournaments, right? But no, look at this. This is a karate tournament for children. When I sit here and talk about it, all I can think is, why? Why is any of this happening? But when I am watching, all I am thinking is, let's go! Of course we gotta have a hype-ass stadium and go all out. I am constantly at this level of hype watching this show. I genuinely don't think it's this easy for me to get this hyped about something. But Cobra Kai has done it so many goddamn times, and it's always got me so goddamn conflicted. Like, a perfect example of this is at the end of the first season, where we got Miguel versus ROBBY, and I feel like I should make this very clear now. Miguel is my boy. Miguel can do no wrong, and I will forever be on his side. It has been like this since day goddamn one. But at the same time, I'm over here like, well, I don't want Miguel to lose, obviously. But you know what? I kind of don't want ROBBY to lose either. But I definitely want to see these guys fight. And that just keeps happening. Like, I have my favorite characters, but I still love probably every character. I hate with all of my heart seeing Kenny at the beginning of season 4 and knowing what he's going to become. Man, I love hating this kid. He is such a good villain. They did his descent so well. Every character has their side to the story, and it's pretty hard to just pick one and agree with it. Alright, I'm gonna pause the ramble. We're gonna try to go back, write this out, and have somewhat of a structured video essay. I'm gonna try to go over the story, characters, and just some other things I think are important to talk about, because I think it makes more sense to do that, and then I'll probably ramble at the end. So a lot of the examples I just used in my ramble were with the newer characters, and I think it's a great example that you don't need to be extremely familiar with the Karate Kid movies to enjoy Cobra Kai. There's plenty of new stories and new characters for new fans, and most of the small references from the movies aren't distracting to people who don't catch them, right? Like, they got big if you know vibes. And then the bigger, more important references, you're probably gonna get a story or a flashback, or most likely both to go with it. And I know this is a good show for new viewers because both my cousins loved the show, and neither of them had watched the movies until after they'd watched Cobra Kai, and they never felt lost or confused. So I do know that for a fact, there are people who can watch the show without having to watch the movies. But if you want my personal opinion, I absolutely think you should watch the movies. Or I guess the first 3, because man, that fourth one was bad, and to the best of my knowledge, has not been referenced in the show yet. You know what has been referenced in the show? Music. And yes, I'm committing to that as my segue into talking about the music in the show. I think music can really make or break a show, and for Cobra Kai, the music is just as perfect as everything else. Plenty of classic rock, new pop, a bunch of original songs, and my favorites are the remixes of old songs, like Cruel Summer. And I wish I were smart enough to talk about music in some kind of a profound way, but I just can't, and instead of trying to figure out why I think most of the songs fit perfectly in all the scenes that they're attached to, I'm just gonna leave you with that. I think all the songs fit perfectly with the scenes they're attached to. I would play you the music, but unfortunately I can't because YouTube will delete me, and I'm really bad at finding the right copyright-free music to use in my videos, so I want to give a huge shout out to African Nerd Music. He makes awesome remixes and themes for a bunch of the different characters in Cobra Kai, and it's awesome. Please go check him out if you like what you hear, or you like the soundtrack from the show and just want some more of it. Alright, I've been saying a whole lot of nothing for a while, so let's get into the story now, and for that, I'm gonna split that up into 2 parts. Oh, and also, spoilers for Karate Kids 1, 2, and 3, and Cobra Kai Seasons 1 through 5. So we have what I consider the A-plot. Most of the stories here focus on the older characters. The parents, mentors, and most importantly, returning characters from the original movies. The most important ones being Johnny Lawrence and Daniel LaRusso. Now Johnny, he's not doing great. He's working as a handyman, he lives in a shitty apartment, and has a drinking problem. And in the first episode, we see that Johnny is having a really shitty day that ends in him using karate to kick the shit out of a bunch of assholes to protect Miguel, but more importantly his car. So after being arrested and wanting to change his life, Johnny reopens Cobra Kai, with Miguel as his first student. Now we also got Daniel LaRusso, who owns his own car dealership and lives in a nice big house with his wife and kids. And Daniel is living that good life until the reopening of Cobra Kai starts to trigger all of Daniel's bad memories with Cobra Kai. And Daniel decides Cobra Kai's gotta go, right, by any means necessary. Now that doesn't work out too well for Daniel, but he ends up trying to find balance through Miyagi-Do, and even starts training one of his new employees, who is actually Johnny's son, ROBBY. Cobra Kai sign up for the All-Valley Under-18 Karate Tournament and win in the finals against Miyagi-Do and ROBBY. After the tournament, Kreese makes this dramatic-ass entrance and ends up convincing Johnny to let him help run Cobra Kai. So then our 2 dojos spend the summer trying to recruit new students. tensions rise between the dojos, but also between Johnny and Kreese. And a lot of the kids' drama builds up to this big school fight that results in Johnny and Daniel both quitting teaching, leaving Kreese to run Cobra Kai. Then Johnny and Daniel both go on their own self-discovery journeys that lead them back to teaching karate. For Johnny, it was seeing how Kreese made all of his old students assholes. And Daniel actually ends up going back to Okinawa to do car dealership things, because having one of your karate students try to kill another kid is bad for business. And while he's in Okinawa, Daniel is able to reconnect to Mr. Miyagi and Miyagi-Do through Kumiko and Chosen. And when Daniel comes back to the valley, he sees his students have still been trying to fight Cobra Kai. So now Johnny and Daniel are both teaching again, but after some help from Allie, the two decide to join forces to take down Cobra Kai. This leads to Kreese recruiting Terry Silver to help him teach Cobra Kai. Johnny and Daniel struggle to work together though, and end up going their own separate ways and lose the All Valley to Cobra Kai. Johnny accepts this and tries to go fix his relationships with his kids, ROBBY and Miguel, his real son. But Daniel's not okay with letting Terry Silver run Cobra Kai and continues to try to fight Terry with the help of Chosen. And it's just Terry now because Terry framed Kreese for assault and took over Cobra Kai. Unfortunately, Daniel is unable to beat Terry, and Johnny comes back to help Daniel and Chosen train their students again. And now with everyone working together again, they are finally able to take down Silver and Cobra Kai and also qualify for a new tournament, the Sekai Taikai. Now that was literally the most basic plot summary I could give for the show. I left out a lot of cool details, I know, but I just want to give a very quick rundown. And all the fun stuff like Johnny and Daniel bonding, don't make that rundown any quicker. So that's basically the main story. Karate is the most important thing and will forever control the valley. But the stories beyond that tend to focus on the romances with the younger cast. Now I feel like I've been wasting a lot of time, and I'm going to continue to waste time. So to try to make up for that, I'm gonna try to go through this part as fast as I can. Not because it's bad, I think it'd be pretty funny if I just went through it. So Miguel and Sam start to date after Miguel stands up to Kyler for spreading lies about Sam. But because Miguel's in Cobra Kai and Daniel probably wouldn't accept Miguel, Sam keeps Miguel a secret and doesn't tell Miguel why, so Miguel assumes he's embarrassed of him. Then one night Miguel goes to introduce himself to Sam's family, but sees ROBBY having dinner with Sam and the rest of the LaRussos and starts to get jealous and lash out and accidentally hits Sam when he's trying to hit ROBBY, and Sam and Miguel break up. But then Tori shows up, tries to help Miguel get over Sam by sticking her tongue down his throat. And Sam and ROBBY get closer when they start training together and eventually get together, but then Sam gets drunk at a party and kisses Miguel, and Tori sees that, so she goes to fight Sam and calls it the coolest fight scene ever, and ROBBY puts Miguel in the hospital and gets arrested. So now everyone's kind of broken up, but Sam and Miguel start to get back together and upsets both ROBBY and Tori, so Tori and ROBBY go out initially just to mess with Sam and Miguel, but then actually end up caring about each other. But ROBBY quits Cobra Kai and wants Tori to quit too, but she doesn't and they break up. Then Miguel runs off to Mexico to find his dad, but when he comes back, Sam wants to find out who she really is and thinks it would be best if she wasn't dating. So now everyone's kind of broken up, but then after they all take down Cobra Kai, Miguel and Sam get back together, and ROBBY and Tori get back together. And also Hawk dates Moon and Dimitri dates Yasmin. Okay. Alright. I think I got everything I want to there. Again, wanted to keep it as brief as possible because now we're actually going to get into it. Cool? Cool. Okay, I want to start with Daniel LaRusso because at first I didn't think I'd have a whole lot to say about Daniel, which, yeah, no, that was really stupid of me to think because Daniel has a lot going on. He was the protagonist from the first 3 Karate Kid movies, the underdog, then the champ, and a hero to the people of Okinawa. And that's all thanks to Mr. Miyagi. But before all that, he was just a poor kid from Jersey. He came from nothing and barely had 2 pennies to rub together. But 34 years of being the champ can really get to your head. Not to mention that he got all rich and successful. Well, but wait, what about everything Mr. Miyagi taught him about balance? Well, Daniel's life couldn't always be about karate. He went and started a business and a family, and karate just kept getting further and further away from him. At some point, Sam grew out of karate, at least for the time being, and it seems like Anthony and Amanda never really cared for it. And of course, Mr. Miyagi had passed away, so Daniel started to move forward, away from karate, which for a normal man in his 50s is probably fine. But this is not a normal man in his 50s, alright? This is Daniel LaRusso, the Karate Kid. So you take away that balance Daniel had from Miyagi and karate, but keep the cocky Jersey attitude, and you get season 1 Daniel LaRusso.
I kicked his face.
Now, to this Daniel, as long as Cobra Kai is involved, Daniel can do no wrong. Whatever it takes to bring down the guy who bullied him in high school, he's gonna do it. It doesn't matter how many other people get hurt or what Cobra Kai is doing for these kids who are getting picked on at school. Cobra Kai has to go down. But Daniel ends up getting a reality check from his wife and starts to realize that maybe he's going a little too far, but more importantly, that he doesn't have balance anymore. So Daniel starts to get back into karate, and we can see him start to find that balance again. But just because he found karate doesn't mean that he found balance. And yes, I'm saying balance a lot. I know that. I'm gonna keep saying it because
balance is my thing.
Daniel is stuck in this mentality that nothing good can come from Cobra Kai. So he opens his own dojo and offers free classes to try to get kids to learn Miyagi-Do instead of Cobra Kai. All while knowing his daughter's best friend is in Cobra Kai. He literally hears her mom talking about what Cobra Kai has done for her. And somehow Daniel can still only see Cobra Kai as a bad thing. He never wanted to learn what this new Cobra Kai was. He just wanted it gone. And then the school fight happened, and Daniel was still trying to blame Cobra Kai for everything that happened. Yes, Tori started the fight, but ROBBY, Daniel's student, is the one that almost killed Miguel. And Daniel just couldn't see that he was part of the problem until Amanda gave him another reality check. And once Daniel sees that he was part of the problem and it was having a real effect on other people, he quits Miyagi-Do. Daniel really only ever had balance when he had Miyagi, so trying to do this without him is tough for Daniel, and it's probably why Daniel's trip to Okinawa was probably the best thing for him. The trip had a rough start, but by the end of it, Daniel was able to feel close to Miyagi again. And then later, with a reality check from Ali, Daniel is finally able to admit that he has faults and has been part of the problem. And maybe Johnny isn't the worst thing to ever be in his life. And he can even agree to work with Johnny to fight against Kreese and Cobra Kai. But when the worst part of Daniel's past with Cobra Kai comes back, Daniel goes right back to his old ways. I'm right, Miyagi-Do is the only way to do things, and the students shouldn't learn any other way. It's in these moments of crisis that Daniel's natural reaction is to take over and do what he thinks is best, not thinking about everyone involved. I feel like I've been more negative on Daniel than I actually think he is. I believe that Daniel is a good person who cares deeply for his family and genuinely just wants what's best for people he cares about. His feelings aren't coming from an evil place, but they just aren't necessarily good. And unfortunately, he has a pretty traumatic past with these people that makes him act in ways that aren't okay. Daniel can still grow and change and can even work with and be friends with people like Johnny, Chosen, and Mike, but he was on edge and distrusting of all of them after Cobra Kai re-entered his life. Because at his core, Daniel struggles to change. And in that sense, he's a lot like Cobra Kai, and he's a lot like John Kreese. John Kreese is a man who is always at war. And also, John Kreese is the type of man to fake his own death not once, not twice, but 3 times. In the original movies, John Kreese was a man who taught kids to fight to win, like their lives depended, like they were at war. In those movies, Kreese is just a crazy karate sensei who had controversial teaching methods, but in Cobra Kai, we get to really dive into who John Kreese is. When he's first introduced, he seems to still be the same man we saw in those movies. Tough, cold, and confident. But Johnny doesn't want to let Kreese back into his life, so Kreese tries a different approach. He seems more genuine and even sentimental towards Johnny in the good old days. And it's all just enough for Johnny to let Kreese back into his life. But there's still something off with Kreese. Like, other than the whole evil karate sensei thing, his stories aren't all adding up, and my boy Miguel over here starts to call him out. So Johnny goes to find out what Kreese is really doing, and it turns out Kreese's life has been pretty shit since the movies. Cobra Kai had been banned from the All Valley Under-18 karate tournament, and he couldn't re-enlist in the army, so there was no place for John Kreese. To the world, John Kreese was dead, until Johnny reopened Cobra Kai. Kreese had a purpose. He had another war to fight. And just like always, Kreese plans on winning this war.
But just as they let their guard down, that's when you strike the hardest.
When Johnny let his guard down, Kreese took the opportunity to strike the hardest. He saw how Johnny was running things and didn't think it would win the war, so Kreese made all the arrangements to take over Cobra Kai. And in Season 3, we get peak Kreese. I mean, he's going all Viltrumite on his students, removing the weakest links to make the chain as strong as possible. Finding ways to bring out, in his eyes, the absolute best for his students. When Miguel got hurt, Kreese didn't actually care about Miguel because Miguel was never his student. Kreese used Miguel getting hurt to his advantage. He used it to motivate his students to make them stronger. Now, he may not care for everyone, but he does care for his students, and he always has. He still cares the most for Johnny, his star pupil. It was when Kreese saw Johnny hurt and defeated that Kreese went to such an extreme measure against Daniel and Miyagi. The things he does all come from a place of love for his students, even taking over Cobra Kai. He didn't want to see Johnny fail to lead the next generation of Cobra Kai, and he constantly tries to get Johnny back on his side. But Johnny still left Cobra Kai, and Kreese found a new star pupil, one from a troubled past that he could help guide to being the strongest soldier. And just like Johnny, he truly does care for Tori. He wants to see her succeed, and hates how she's being treated. In fact, Kreese just doesn't like guys who disrespect women or take advantage of them. Like, in his sick mind, it's still okay for him to call random women dollface, because in his boomer-ass head, it is a compliment. Now, I'm not endorsing these actions, like don't do that, but I am just trying to acknowledge that that is Kreese's perspective. To him, dollface is a compliment just because it's what he called his girlfriend, who he actually saved from an abusive relationship. You know, I feel like I'm defending Kreese too much, Like, Kreese is not a good person now, but I feel like he did start out as one, and the atrocities of war and then coming back home only to be hated for being a part of it all had its toll on Kreese and made him the extremely determined man he is today. He's just so stuck in that war mentality that he knows he needs to win at all costs.
War never ends. Peace is just the lull between battles.
I mean, what could be scarier than a man who is determined to win a war? A man who wants to rule the world. Terry Silver, or as my cousins and I now know him as, the Boogeyman, is one of the most villainous villains I have ever seen villain. Let's go ahead and take a look at his character from Karate Kid 3. He rolls up and is just like, yo, this kid beat Cobra Kai in the All Valley Under 18 karate tournament. I'm gonna do everything in my power to destroy this kid's life. He stops whatever plutonium deals he was making at the time to torment a high schooler for winning a children's karate tournament. If that isn't enough, just look at this man and tell me that he isn't a Bond villain. Always coming out of nowhere explaining his evil plan, and he's everywhere. Goddamn Boogeyman. Now, Terry Silver is not John Kreese. He doesn't wait for the best moment to strike. Terry makes the best moment to strike. Terry is all about the mind games, manipulating people to get what he wants. And where Kreese does at least care for his students, doesn't seem like Terry cares about anyone. He's willing to beat a man into the hospital to betray his best friend and have him arrested. But why? What does Terry want? World domination. I'm not kidding. This man wants to get Cobra Kai known as the world's best karate dojo, with him leading it. And as we've already gone over, in the world of the Karate Kid, all that matters is karate. Now, what's sad about all this is that when we met Terry in Cobra Kai, he isn't this man. He's living a peaceful life and can even acknowledge how crazy he acted back in the Karate Kid 3.
I was so hopped up on cocaine, revenge. I spent months terrorizing a teenager. It sounds insane just talking about it.
And he wants nothing to do with Kreese or Cobra Kai or even karate. But Terry is an addict. He's not addicted to drugs or alcohol. He is addicted to power, and he gets the most power from karate, and Kreese just had to give him a little taste to completely disrupt everything Terry had been doing with his life. Kreese is the only person we have seen have a real effect on Terry, and Terry even admits that himself. Kreese saved Terry's life back in the war, and ever since, Terry has felt like he owed him, so he always just went along with whatever Kreese wanted. Kreese was the only thing actually between Terry and his true potential, so Terry got rid of Kreese. And as one of the founders of Cobra Kai, Terry does have a very similar perspective to Kreese about winning. Win at all costs. But Terry is the one who always takes this to the furthest extent. Lie, cheat, deceive, whatever it takes. Terry is the type of man who will burn down a furniture store just because the guy who runs it might be able to take him down. If he sees you as a problem, he is going to deal with you. And when it comes to Daniel, Terry knows just how stubborn he is. Terry gave him the chance to stop interfering, but he didn't, so Terry does exactly what he did in Karate Kid 3. He breaks Daniel, physically and mentally. This is what Cobra Kai was made from, so it's easy enough to see why Daniel wants to get rid of it. What about the things that came from Cobra Kai? Like Johnny Lawrence. Johnny was Kreese's star pupil and is the reason Cobra Kai ended up coming back. But the Cobra Kai that Kreese and Terry made isn't the Cobra Kai that Johnny teaches. Johnny's teachings are all about being badass. It's about having a problem and stepping up and taking it on with everything you've got. And Cobra Kai is what taught Johnny how to do that. So naturally, if Johnny's gonna teach some kids how to be badass, he's gonna teach them Cobra Kai. Strike first, strike hard, no mercy. But unlike Terry and Kreese, Johnny's different from Cobra Kai. He can see that things aren't all black and white. You have to be able to adapt because you can't deal with every situation the same way. And showing no mercy is going to make you an asshole. Johnny made a lot of mistakes in his life, and he'll be the first to admit that. But he doesn't want to make mistakes anymore. And the only way to do that is to change. He made a mistake teaching his kids to fight without honor. So he tries to teach them the importance of showing mercy. He failed Miguel in his second tournament by not taking into account what Miguel actually wanted, which led to Miguel backing out of the fight. So when the next tournament rolled around, Johnny made sure to check in with Miguel and make sure he was comfortable comfortable with everything he was doing. And Johnny's biggest failure was not being there for ROBBY. And Johnny's not going to make that mistake again. He's going to make sure he is there for every one of these kids when they need him. And he's not going to run away from his problems anymore. He's going to take them on with everything he's got. And I think it's great just how much Johnny can actually change. But just because he changes doesn't mean he's not Johnny Lawrence. At his core, he is still the same character throughout the entire show. It's still all about being badass. And this is actually something I only really caught on my most recent watch through, but there's this line Johnny has when he's talking to Aisha, and she tells him,
mostly online, these kids create fake accounts, and they tell me things like, I'm ugly.
And his response to this is,
a bunch of pussies. If you wanted to tease someone, you did it to their face.
Johnny's not the type of guy to pick a fight and run. If he does something, he's gonna stand tall and tell you he did it. And there are a few moments where when Daniel's mad at Johnny, he accuses him of something he didn't do. And Johnny tells him, I got no idea what you're talking about. And Daniel always kind of calls bullshit and then brings up something Johnny did do, and Johnny owns up to it. Everything he does, he wears with pride, the good and the bad. And when Johnny does make a mistake, he tries to grow from it. And I think this is the best Johnny. But he's only at this level when he's being driven by something. When Johnny doesn't have a purpose, he's kind of just being a bum, right? Trying to drink all his problems away. But when there are people that Johnny cares about involved, that's when we get the best version of him. He has a complicated past that led him to being alone and without a purpose. But now, Johnny has a second chance and he doesn't plan on wasting it. And I think that's all really because of Miguel. Miguel gave Johnny a second chance. Now, just to make sure everyone knows, Miguel is the best character in Cobra Kai. End of discussion. Yes, that is obviously my opinion, but shut up, it's my video. I have been on Miguel's side since day one, and I have been on his side ever since. Now, obviously, I'm not saying any other character is bad. In fact, I love most of these characters. But there's just something about Miguel, you know? So, who is Miguel? He's some dorky kid from Riverside. Seems really nice. You know, a pretty stereotypical nerd in a high school-based TV show. So naturally, he needs to be picked on by some stereotypical high school-based TV bullies, which is actually what leads him to learning karate from Johnny. And from here on out, it's a lot of ups and downs for Miguel, just a real roller coaster. But Miguel never stays down for long. He always finds his way back up, and he always keeps fighting for what he believes in. And I think that's really why I love him so much. Miguel is not a perfect character, but perfect characters aren't as fun to watch as characters who make mistakes and learn and grow from the choices they make. You know, that is most of the characters in the show, but I think when it comes to Miguel's character, it's done in such a good way. When he starts getting really good at karate, he starts to get pretty cocky and a little full of himself. You know, kind of just what happens, I guess. But most importantly, he doesn't fight with honor. So Johnny takes the time to sit down with Miguel and really make sure he knows why the path he's going down isn't gonna end well. And Miguel knows that Johnny really does just want what's best for him, and he trusts Johnny. And Miguel starts to try to leave the past behind and make more honorable decisions. And I think now is a good time to talk about what Miguel fights for, because at this point, I really feel like this is peak Miguel. Miguel doesn't fight out of anger or spite most of the time. He fights for what he believes in, which is protecting himself and protecting others and proving that people can't push him around anymore. It's about balance and being badass. And Miguel knows when to walk away and stop fighting. And it leads to Miguel's decisions he makes in the school fight. He looks at why he's fighting ROBBY, and it's not really what he wants, so he makes the merciful choice and lets go of ROBBY, completely ready to walk away. And I mean, it's perfect, right? It's everything Miguel learned throughout the last 2 seasons, and it should just be this incredible moment for Miguel's arc. Still hurts. Every time. Still hurts. So Miguel falls and ends up in the hospital, and at first he's kind of mad at Johnny, but he still knows Johnny just wants what's best for him, and continues to trust Johnny and stay on his side. And he isn't really mad at anyone other than ROBBY after the fight. Miguel never had problems with Tori, Sam, Hawk, or Dimitri anyway. They were all always important to Miguel, and it seems like they always will be. So he keeps moving forward, and he learns to walk again, and that's all because of the help from Johnny. Not Cobra Kai, Johnny, because most of the students tend to be loyal to the dojo, but Miguel never cared about the dojo. He cared about his sensei. And even when he was learning a lot and enjoyed being a part of Miyagi-Do, he still chose to go with Johnny. And I don't think it's because he went with Johnny, but this is where things really start to go downhill for Miguel. You have the whole, like, Johnny's dating his mom thing. That's obviously weird for Miguel, but it doesn't help with my transition later, so just, like, ignore that for right now. But we got Tori and ROBBY who roll up and ruin prom. Then when Miguel goes to talk to Johnny about all his problems, Johnny hits Miguel with,
I love you too, ROBBY.
And if that didn't hit you, go away. So now we got Miguel going to the All Valley Under 18 karate tournament in just a terrible mental state, and I can't. I mean, I'm writing the script. Like, I'm not even watching it again. I am just writing and recording this, and I am getting mad. I am getting mad because every one of these bad things that I just talked about with prom and what Johnny said to him, and then the goddamn tournament and his hurt back, they are all because of Robbie, okay? It's all because of Robbie, and I hate you, Robbie. I hate you. I said it, and I mean it. I hate you and your stupid old haircut. It's stupid, and I hate you, Robbie. And I will always hate you for the absolute devastation you have done to my boy. And there is absolutely nothing.
I'm sick of blaming you, Dad.
God damn it. Fine. Let's talk about Robbie. So Robbie Keene is basically just Anakin Skywalker, alright? Hear me out. Born without a father, lived with his mother who was always around terrible men, and was always finding a way to get what he needs, until he was recruited by the good guys, and learned the ways of balance and other good guy qualities. But the anger and hate inside of him was always there, and it ended up being too much, and after being betrayed by the good guys, he turns to the bad guys, who believe in being the strongest and most powerful, and using his anger and hate are able to make him stronger and more powerful. But there is still good in him, and he ends up rejoining the good guys to help take down the bad guys. So, you know, Robbie's Anakin. Now, depending on how you look at it, I think Robbie has changed sides the most in Cobra Kai. Might be Hawk, but I think my point still stands. Robbie changes sides a lot, so let's talk about why. The driving force behind most of Robbie's decisions seemed to be anger. The only reason Robbie got into karate in the first place was to get back at Johnny. But as Robbie learned Miyagi-Do and trained with Daniel, he started to not care as much about making Johnny mad and cared more about the relationship he now had with Daniel and the LaRussos. Robbie finally had something positive in his life, and he didn't want to lose it, but he never really seemed to get what Miyagi-Do was really about. He still had resentment toward his dad and Miguel, and whether he wanted to or not, he made decisions based off of that anger towards them. And that's what led him to continue to fight Miguel at the school like a little bitch, because Miguel had already won and stopped fighting, so it doesn't even count. Robbie didn't win, okay? And Robbie's... It's fine. I'm fine. Moving on. This ends up with Robbie going to juvie, and while he's in there, he ends up getting the most help from Kreese. And after getting out, Robbie starts to reflect and realize that karate is starting to be a bigger problem for him than anything else. Not only that, but at this point he's pretty mad at both Daniel and Johnny, and once again, making his decisions based off his anger, Robbie joins Cobra Kai. Now, he could also just be trying to get them to stop teaching in hopes that if no one is doing karate, then everyone can chill and stop hating each other, but I also think that's part of my brain that's just trying not to hate Robbie, so I don't know. Now, the most important things to come out of Robbie's time in Cobra Kai are his relationships with Tori and Kenny. With Tori, he found someone in a similar situation as him and has a similar mindset that he can relate to. And with Kenny, Robbie saw a chance to be better than Daniel and Johnny and teach Kenny to be the best version of himself. And you can tell Robbie does care about Kenny, but he sees just how hard it is to be a mentor when he sees that Kenny's turning into a bully. All this combined with what Daniel warned him would happen, and Robbie can finally look at everything and see all the mistakes he made. And he needed to find a way to leave behind all his hate. So essentially, that's Robbie in season 5. He wants to try to fix all his relationships and move past his hate with everyone, except Miguel, because Robbie's a little bitch and tried to kill Miguel, but it's okay, because Miguel kissed his girlfriend or something. So I will admit, I do like Robbie as a character, and I always want to see him succeed, unless him succeeding hurts my boy Miguel, because Miguel is my favorite. So most of my hate for Robbie comes from the fact that Miguel is my boy. Alright, you know what? Could I find a way to actually talk about Miguel and Robbie in season 5? Yes, I don't care. It's so hype that I'm going off script for it. I'm going off script and I'm rambling. This is gonna be a bad part of the video. This is the end of their rivalry. It has been going on the entire show, right? And we are at a point where they need to be on the same side. They're fighting the same enemy. They all have the same friends. They need to be friends, and Johnny knows that. He tries the good way. He tries to get them to be friends just through talking it out. That doesn't work. It's kind of Daniel's idea, but Johnny just has him fight it out. It's not, I don't think it's the fight that I wanted it to be, but I still think it did so much to just have these two finally fight it out, to finish that fight. Miguel beating Robbie because he's the better fighter, obviously, and he chooses mercy. He still makes the same decision, but this time, Robbie's not a little bitch and doesn't try to kill Miguel. And just having them talk it out after that, they're just like, you know what? Here's how I feel. All right, here's how I feel. We cool? We're cool. Then they eat Olive Garden. They're eating the breadsticks, dude. They're just eating breadsticks. They're chilling. They're vibing. They're bros now. They are brothers. They are brothers now. I would have liked to see a little more tension between them after this, of just like, we're getting there. Nah, they're just brothers, and you know what? I'm cool with that too. I'm fine with it. They're bros, and it's so good. Having Miguel step up to Kenny when he's trying to step up to Robbie. Oh my God, he's protecting his brother, and I love it. And I love more. I love more when Kenny and these random Cobras are just jumping Robbie over here, and Miguel wipes the floor with them. Miguel came in to save Robbie. I need so much more of them working together. It's been such a love-hate relationship with my love for both of these characters and trying to, you know, really looking at it and being like, okay, I love Miguel, I love Robbie, I hate that they're fighting, and also because they're fighting, I have to choose a side, and it's Miguel's side, obviously. And so being at this point where I don't have to do that anymore, it's perfect. It's done. We're done. That's it. We don't need to go over it anymore. It's incredible to have two of the three best fighters of the students finally not oppose each other, but I do still hope they are to fight again. But speaking of the top three fighters, let's go ahead and talk about the third of those top three fighters. Eli Moskowitz is the embodiment of becoming badass. Going from the kid who got bullied so hard he always went home crying to an absolute beast who isn't going to take shit from anyone. In the first season, he's probably the nerd who's the worst off, because as if being a nerd wasn't enough, Eli had a scarred lip that people like to make fun of for some reason. But thanks to Cobra Kai, Eli is able to become Hawk, and starts to get the same kind of confidence Miguel did. But they really start to go down different paths after Kreese shows up. Whenever Johnny was upset with Hawk and Miguel, he always sat down with Miguel and explained everything and made sure he knew that Johnny just wants what's best for him. But Hawk never got that. He never got the attention that Miguel did. And let's be honest, Miguel was always the better fighter, so Hawk was always coming in second right behind Miguel. So when Kreese showed up and started giving Hawk the attention he wanted, Hawk latched onto that. So like I said earlier, Eli had the worst of the nerds. His confidence was at an all-time low and couldn't even talk to girls, let alone try to go on dates. And the people who got to do all that were the bullies. The jerks who picked on anyone who was less than they were. So that was Hawk's idea of what it was like to be cool and popular. And that side of him only really came out when Kreese showed up. Kreese saw the rage inside of Hawk, and instead of trying to remove it like Daniel would, or trying to control it like Johnny would, Hawk learned to embrace it and use it to win. And Hawk chose to use his rage on someone who was less than he was. He chose to use it on Dimitri. Dimitri was a reminder of what Hawk used to be, the nerd who got made fun of and picked on and could never get a girlfriend. And Hawk hated seeing that version of himself, and so he made Dimitri his target. And things only got worse after the school fight, because now Miguel and Johnny weren't there, and Kreese was able to get complete control over Hawk. And his anger towards Dimitri started getting a lot worse too, when Dimitri started getting the right kind of confidence from Miyagi-Do and was getting attention from the popular kids without being a jerk. In his mind, it's like, well, how come Dimitri can just be himself and get to hang out with all the popular girls? And all this rage and what Kreese is teaching him lead Hawk to cross a line. And in one of the most upsetting scenes, at least to me, Hawk broke Dimitri's arm. And I love the regret on his face after he did it. Like, he didn't want to do it in the first place, but all the bullshit that's been polluting his head took him to that point. And after that, he started seeing more and more that he didn't like from Cobra Kai. Like how all of his friends like Miguel and Assface and Bert were gone. And now Cobra Kai was filled with all the jerks who used to pick on him, and worst of all, Robbie showed up and got more respect on his first day than Hawk had at all at this point. And when Hawk finally had to face his friends, he knew that Cobra Kai wasn't where he belonged, and so Hawk switched sides. And while it didn't seem as earned as it probably should have, it is still as hype as that kind of moment should be. And it's really good to see Hawk with his friends again, but it isn't all smooth sailing. He made a lot of mistakes when he was in Cobra Kai, so he's got a lot to make up for to almost everyone. But weirdly enough, not Dimitri. You know, I know there's a lot more for Hawk after this, but I think I'm good to call it here so we can start talking about Dimitri. So rounding out the group of nerds, we got Dimitri Alexopoulos? I don't care. Dimitri is the most nerd of all the nerds, and unlike Hawk, Dimitri has no problem with that. He's constantly referencing movies and TV shows and video games, and he goes to comic book stores and brings board games to house parties that are clearly not board game parties. And just this scene at the beach party.
Oh, they're all out of Mr. Pibbs. I got the last one.
You know, early seasons Dimitri, he's kind of just me, and I don't know how to feel about that. Okay, but seriously, I think Dimitri is a pretty happy character. Sure, he gets shit for being a nerd, but it never seemed to bother him as much as it did for Hawk and Miguel. And when they went off and learned karate, Dimitri was just fine just hanging out with them. The whole karate thing wasn't really for him, so he just let them handle it. At least until Hawk started to go through his
Red Hulk phase.
and started messing with Dimitri. So karate was kind of a last resort, and Dimitri decided to try to join Miyagi-Do in the hopes that training there wouldn't result in a broken nose. Now, I think Dimitri is weirdly the best representation of Miyagi-Do, or at least Miyagi-Do as we've known it up to this point. In Season 2, Miyagi-Do's goal is to take down Cobra Kai, even though that up to this point, Cobra Kai wasn't doing the normal bully thing that they used to do in the 80s. So Miyagi-Do wasn't actually about defense until Dimitri showed up, because Dimitri was actually getting bullied. But he's not being bullied by just anyone. He's getting bullied by his best friend. Dimitri actually needs to defend himself. And for the first time in the show, it feels like Miyagi-Do is living up to the legacy of what Mr. Miyagi was teaching, using karate for defense, not just of oneself, but also those who can't defend themselves. And not only that, but Dimitri isn't one to hold a grudge. Sure, at first he does with a couple of ex-Cobras like Kreese and Nate who want to join Miyagi-Do, but after that, Dimitri doesn't have real beef with anyone, even after everything that happened with Hawk. Dimitri was the first one to completely forgive and accept Hawk when he wanted to join Miyagi Fang. And it was Dimitri who was there for Hawk after he lost all his confidence. Dimitri has always been in his corner because Eli is his best friend, and not even breaking his arm could stop that. Really just shows that Dimitri is probably the most forgiving character in the show. Now why don't we go ahead and look at someone who's a lot less forgiving? And yes, that is basically everyone, I'm aware of that, but I couldn't think of another transition, so we're sticking with this. For me, one of the most interesting things about a character is their motivation. What drives them to do what they do? And what is it they actually want? Tori Nichols is someone who wants to win. She has been struggling and fighting losing battles her whole life, but she's never stopped fighting. For some characters, loss would bring them down, but Tori uses loss as motivation. Her failures are a strong driving force and make her an incredibly focused person. Let's look at her character in Season 2. She shows up, and it seems like she's hitting it off with Miguel, but also she is immediately given a negative impression of Sam from Aisha. Then when Tori and Sam actually meet, they have opposing ideologies and have a physical altercation. Then Tori finds out Miguel was dating Sam and wants her back. And now, in Tori's mind, she has to beat Sam. So Tori starts to really go after Miguel, and it works. Now, I'm not saying Tori was only after Miguel because she wanted to beat Sam. I do think there was a genuine connection between Tori and Miguel, but Sam never really left the equation. And it's stuff like at the roller rink when Tori sees Sam, she kisses Miguel in front of her. It's like Tori is telling Sam that she's winning. And when she sees Miguel and Sam kiss, it doesn't just hurt that her boyfriend cheated on her, but also that she just lost to Sam. So if she can't beat Sam at dating, she's gonna try to beat her in a fight. And that all ends with... still hurts. Anyway, it's her first interaction with Miguel after Miguel kissed Sam where Tori says,
"But we're doing everything we can to get back at Miyagi-Do for what they did to you."
She's still trying to win even though Miguel doesn't care about that anymore. Tori doesn't want to try to make it work with Miguel because she's more focused on fighting Miyagi-Do and Sam. And she starts doing some crazy shit, like break into the LaRusso house to fight Sam. Another great example of how Tori will keep escalating things to try to win. You guys remember how Tori kissed Miguel in front of Sam at the roller rink, and it seemed like it was for Sam more than anyone else? Yeah, well, she does the exact same thing with ROBBY. Sure, she does have an interest in ROBBY, but the most important thing at the time was showing Sam and Miguel how much better she was doing. Tori was winning. The biggest difference here is that, in the end, she cared more about the time she spent with ROBBY than the time messing with Miguel and Sam. So now we got Tori at the All Valley Under-18 Karate Tournament, where she wins. And this is really one of those conflicting moments where I'm happy and sad that Tori won all at the same time, until we find out that Terry cheated, and Tori might not have actually won. And by might not have, she definitely didn't win because Sam scored 3 points before Tori did. Anyway, could Tori have just ignored it and taken the dub? Sure, but that's not who Tori is. She wants to earn her wins, and that's why she fights so hard. And if we've learned anything about Tori, it's that if she sees a fight, she's not going to walk away from it. And now, her fight is with the man who took her legitimate win away from her. So now we got Tori working as a spy for Kreese, and it's super cool. But also, it means that she's technically on the same side as everyone else now. So we finally get Tori officially being one of the good guys. So it's great to see that Tori's with the good guys now, but why don't we go ahead and talk about someone who's always been one of the good guys. Sam is a very smart and strong and driven person, but where Tori knew how to use all that, Sam just can't quite figure it out. I think Johnny said it best.
You want to sit in the backseat your whole life? Go right ahead.
I think Sam only had a couple moments that show who she really is. Her date with Miguel and her training with Johnny. But the rest of the time, there was always something in the way. Sam is very much Daniel's daughter. If you knock down a LaRusso, they come back swinging. Sam, just like Daniel, is a hothead. And when she sees an opportunity to strike, she's gonna go for it. But that's not what Miyagi-Do is about. It's about avoiding fights. And that's not what Sam wants to do, but it's what she's been taught her whole life. This whole time she's been learning from Daniel and feels like she's been in his shadow, and she doesn't want that anymore. It's Johnny and his teachings that open up Sam's eyes to a whole new world, a world where she can make her own choices and decide who she wants to be. Now, if you ask me, season 5 Sam was really stupid. It seemed like they just hit the reset button and made her split up with Miguel and stop doing karate, only to have her decide that by the end of the season she did want to do karate and does want to be with Miguel. But like, that was her entire story for the last 4 seasons. Like, everything we got from season 5 Sam, we had already gotten through better arcs in the rest of the show. But aside from that, I really like Sam's character. I think from what I've seen at least, she tends to be people's least favorite, but I think it's fun to see the Karate Kid's legacy do something other than be the next Karate Kid. Okay, so I don't have a good transition into the outro here. I had to call it just because I have been working on this video for the last 4 months, and like every day I was finding something new to add or a better way to incorporate something or just rewrite anything, and we got to the point where I just had to stop myself, right? Because if I didn't, I could work on this video for like another year probably, just figuring out everything I want to say and then finding the best way to incorporate all of it into a script that actually has a nice flow to it and nice structure, as opposed to, here are 10 things I like about Miguel or whatever. I didn't want to do that. I wanted to make a somewhat structured video, and it only got harder to do that with every new thing I added and wanted to talk about. And so I did end up just saying, let's stop, let's just finish this video. You're never gonna finish it otherwise. So about at the time I decided to do that, I was still writing for Hawk, Dimitri, Tori, and Sam, and also I was going back and doing rewrites for all the other characters too, but I feel like I had enough for the other characters, like I had enough of what I wanted to say, whereas like Hawk, like I stopped talking about Hawk right before he joined up with Miyagi-Fang, like right before he went back to the good guys. There's plenty more to talk about with Hawk. I am well aware of that, and I'm sorry if like your favorite parts of Hawk were after that. I tried to pick like 1 or 2 things to really talk about with each character that I felt strongly enough about to talk about. Like for Terry, I want to talk about how Terry was not a psychopath when we meet him in Cobra Kai and how easily he turned into one. Like that was just something I really want to talk about. But there were so many other things for literally every character. The ones I talked about, obviously, I got to say something about, but with someone like Sam, I definitely did not say enough about Sam. But there were characters, Kenny and Anthony initially had their own sections. I was going to do sections about them, and they were very much even less than Sam of, I have things I want to say and I just can't figure out the right structure of their section, and I just decided to cut them just because I would have spent too long on a character like Kenny more than Anthony. But I think even Anthony has so much to his character of being a part of the Karate Kid family that doesn't care about karate. I think that's very interesting and could go into that. I'm already going into it. This is what I'm talking about. Like, I have to stop myself. This is what has happened like every day where I think of something new to say about a character. I'm just like, do that, talk about that. And I will never finish this video. And I want to make other videos is also the thing. I have other videos in mind that I want to go do, and I can't do those until I finish this one. I'm a very weird person like that. I could spend a year working on this video, or I could just call it because this is going to be like a 50+ minute video. I don't know who's still watching. I don't know that I've said anything meaningful in the last 50 minutes of this video. So if you're still watching, thank you so much. Thank you so much for being here, making it this far, and caring enough to like listen to me, essentially my love letter to Cobra Kai, to my favorite show ever. So just thank you for that. Second thing, you're a goddamn psychopath for listening to a random person say nothing for 50 minutes. I don't think I've said a single goddamn thing. I don't know what I've said that has had any meaningful impact on emphasizing how good this show is or bad this show is. If you want like someone smart talking about Cobra Kai, I think it's Strife the Warrior has pretty good like in-depth character essays. Go watch those. Get out of here. Don't watch this. He's smarter than me. Everyone is. Oh, I was talking about things I still had to say about the show. By the way, off script. Not sure if you could tell. Total ramble. Just whatever's in my head is what I'm going with right now. So things I wanted to talk about that I did not make it into this video, specifically with characters. Aisha, love Aisha. One of my favorite characters for the 2 seasons she was in, but she is the example of too perfect of a character. She did not have enough beef with anyone, and I don't think she had a strong enough opinion of which dojo would be best for her. So I totally get them writing Aisha out after season 2. It sucked though, because I love Aisha. Weirdly, one of my favorite characters, probably just because she's such a cool character, such a nice character, such a like unharmful character. I never find myself hating her like I did ROBBY, obviously, or like there were moments with Tori and Sam and Hawk, even Miguel. I never found myself actually hating Aisha, and for this kind of a show, that is a problem. So I get the writing her out. Stingray, oh my god, Stingray is such a great character. His character has so many layers to what should be a complete joke, and for the most part is. But they're able to do so much with his character and have it mean something. I absolutely love when he is telling his story through a D&D campaign. Like I think that does so much for the type of character he is. Of the best way to express himself is through something like a D&D campaign, but he's also telling this very tragic story that like he is getting choked up and he's tearing up as he's telling it. The actor's just incredible. I love the actor and I love what he brings to the character and just how well written his character is, where I think in other shows a character like this wouldn't work. But Stingray also just brings so much fun to the show. Just his willingness to beat up kids is fantastic. I love it. He is not afraid to beat the shit out of kids. His little crawl, I don't know what he's doing with that crawl, but it's incredible. I love it. Just look at it. It's so good. When he rolls up and saves Daniel and he throws the sunglasses on and is just like,
Stingrays see better in the dark.
I'm so confused and hyped at the same time. Bunch of other characters, Nate and Bert, are fun to help put some names and faces to the dojos. Someone like Kreese, who got to kind of lead the ex-Cobras joining Miyagi-Do, and then Assface, my preferred name for Penis Breath Mitch. His little like twist reveal at the end of season 5. When you go back and watch season 5 after knowing about it, it's so obvious. It is so obvious. But I think when you're watching season 5 for the first time, you're kind of just like, he's just being a dude. He's being a guy. But like, nah, it's great. Plenty of other characters. Amanda, right? Amanda is so important to mostly Daniel, but I love that she can break off and have her own little stories. She can do things that are for her. The fact that she goes and has this like little relationship with Tori, just to have them, those two characters, I would never have thought to have scenes together, let alone an entire story arc together. Louis and Anush are so much fun to have on screen together. And then I think some of my favorite stuff with characters is returning characters from the movies. Chosen being such an important one. I thought about having a section for him. There's plenty to talk about there. It ended up falling in the same category as all these other characters I'm talking about now. But I love that Chosen is someone they brought in to match Terry's intensity. Like the fact that we can have Chosen and Terry have their little like, okay, they meet, Chosen's playing the game, Terry, in an insane twist, is able to catch him. That setup for their final battle, I can't tell you enough how fucking cool this is. Where Terry grabs a sword from the room of swords he was showing to Chosen earlier in the season, and Chosen busts out the sais that have been used as like a joke for most of the season, and they have a legitimate like, someone's going to die at the end of this fight. I was so scared that Chosen might have died when that all went down. I'm so glad he didn't, obviously. My brain and heart were like fighting, of like my heart being like, oh my god, no, they can't kill him, and my brain like being like, this isn't that kind of show. Why would they kill him? Shut up. Also, just Chosen bringing such a level of fun, right? Like when he gets drunk and is just like drunk Chosen, or all the little jokes he has. I love how well balanced his character is. Even the first time we meet him, when he just clowns Daniel. Like even that one episode he was in was his character. He brings a level of intensity, but can also clown around, and I absolutely love Chosen. Plenty of other like smaller returning characters. Kumiko was also she's the one who even introduced us to Chosen. A lot of fun there. She also brings in the little girl Daniel saved back in Karate Kid 2. That was wild, but not as wild as when in season 5 when Amanda goes to visit her cousin. I'm watching, I'm like, okay, cool, Amanda has a cousin, whatever. And she starts talking about Terry Silver. I look over at my cousin's brother, I'm like, is this the girl from Karate Kid 3? And then as soon as I look back, that it starts the flashback. I'm like, oh my god, it's the girl from Karate Kid 3. That is absolutely insane that they pulled that out of nowhere. Very similar, the ex-Cobras. I feel like that one came out of nowhere back in season 2, where they're just like, oh, and by the way, Johnny is going to hang out with the ex-Cobras because one of them is dying. So those ones are just like, I love how out of nowhere they are, and at the same time they feel so well placed for where they are and where they show up. And of course, the one I was waiting for the whole time, Karate's bad boy, Mike Barnes, dude. He was so good, and of course he was normal. Of course he was normal at the beginning, and of course he had to bring it in that last episode. I would love to see so much more from any of those characters that I just talked about, and specifically like the like relationships any character can have. I would love to see Miguel interact with Terry. That would have been great, and like Dimitri and Robbie should have more of a friendship than I think we see in the show, and it upsets me that we don't, because they're from the same dojo and I feel like they never had beef, but like then when they're on opposing sides they never really talk about it, and they never even really talk when they're on the same side, and it upsets me. Show my boy Dimitri some love is what I want. Have him talk to Miguel more too. I feel like he doesn't talk to anyone other than Hawk enough. Plenty of stuff like that. Even Hawk and Sam seem like they could have a good friendship, and I'd love to see more of that too. It's stuff like that I want to see so much more, but at the same time, I know we can't. Again, when a character like Aisha was coming to a point of like, okay, we're out of stuff to do, they just cut her, and I hate that example because I love and I miss Aisha. But I think for something like a lot of the rivalries feel like they happen so fast. Hawk's switch back in season 3, I feel like there could have been a little more development there, but I think it was fine overall. But then we get to Robbie switching to the good guys, which I think that was well done. That was fine. But him then being friends with Miguel and Hawk so fast those ones were a little too fast for me, and I would have liked a little more. But at the same time, as I talked about with Miguel and Robbie, it's fine. Tori and Sam too, like all those switches I feel like just happened too fast for me. The one I think they did really well was Johnny and Daniel. I think Johnny and Daniel had the best, like, from enemies to best friends, and I think it worked so well because the writers here clearly have a good idea of when something is getting old. Robbie and Miguel was starting to get old, and so they just ended it. They just had all these characters settle their beef in like a scene. I think it's a really good sign for, and I hate talking about this because I never want this show to end. I love this show, but at the same time, I know they cannot keep it this quality forever, and I think it could just be the cast, but it could also be the writers, but people on the show are starting to acknowledge like, hey, we maybe have one more good season in us before we start kind of like going down. And I think just with how aware these writers are with, hey, something's getting old, cool, we'll call it and we'll end it. I trust them to end this show at a good point, and I think it could end here. At least at the time of recording this, they're not renewed for a 6th season, so it could end here. I'd weirdly be fine with that. But if they wanted to, I think they could do one more season, just kind of wrap up any loose ends, do the Sekai Taikai, and have Miguel win, obviously, because if it's not Miguel, what have we been doing this whole time? I do very much think they probably have one more good season in them before there starts to be a drop in quality, and I think they're aware of that. I trust these writers so much that I will watch anything they put out. I think they're working on another project right now. No idea what it is. Very excited for it. And if I had to pitch for them to make anything else, I would love to see a war movie with Kreese and Terry. I would love to see those flashbacks from season 3. I want all that. I want that, but a 2-hour movie, because I don't know who thought of this, but to have them fight over a pit of snakes, I don't know if that's I don't know how accurate that is to what actually happened, but I want to see that movie. I've been rambling too long. I should start wrapping this up. But this is the problem. I have so much to say and just not a good way to actually talk about it. So here we are. The last thing I want to talk about is just how well I think the messaging was. I think they were able to do such a good job with something like there is no absolute good or evil. There is good and evil and good, and everyone has their own side of the story, and so much of it is gray. Obviously, that is in so many other shows and movies and stories, but I just think Cobra Kai does such a good job at really emphasizing even the bad guys have their side to the story, and they make it so you get it. It really is just Johnny's speech when he is talking about black words on a white wall, a lot of gray. Just that whole speech. Go watch that. But yeah, that's kind of all I got here. I know, A, video went on too long. B, ending ramble went on too long. Very sorry for both of those. Thank you for sitting through both of those if you made it this far. It means the world to me. And as much as I would love to keep talking about Cobra Kai, I talked about at the beginning of the ramble, I have other videos I want to make. It's going back to superhero stuff. If that's what you're here for, that's great. Actually, no, fuck you. This is a superhero video, because Xolo Maridueña, who plays Miguel, is playing Blue Beetle in the Blue Beetle movie. And that has me so incredibly excited. I obviously love Xolo Maridueña, love Miguel. He's great. I love the character Blue Beetle. And I say that only getting into the character Blue Beetle after seeing him in Young Justice Season 2. And also, we're not done rambling. Fuck you. Just talking about like Xolo's other projects. I just want to bring this up real quick. I watched that movie, that Netflix movie, He's All That, because I knew that Tanner Buchanan, who plays ROBBY, did karate in it. And I needed my Cobra Kai fix, and I'm like, oh my god, he's doing karate. Okay, I'll watch this garbage movie. It was terrible, and I hated it, but he did karate for like 3 seconds, and I loved it. Anyway, I'm going back to like actual superhero videos soon. So if that's what you're here for, if you sat through this, much appreciated. Oh, before I leave, I got one last thing. I know it's felt like one last thing for the last 20 minutes, but one last thing. It is the most important thing of this show. It is the most important part of Cobra Kai, and it is that Cobra Kai is not the real show. The real show is Cobra Kyler. Yes, I said that once in front of my cousins. I liked it, committing to it. Cobra Kyler, baby. Okay, bye.